Hi, I'm Nicola Whiting, the co-owner of Titania Group. I'm here to talk about neurodiversity and cybersecurity, why I'm passionate about it and what it means to you. Let me share my slides and then we can dive right in. So neurodiversity and cybersecurity and why we should do it is to me about two things: innovation and resilience. And those two things are basically what our entire industry is based on. We create new things for growth and we protect those things against risk and against attack. So let's get to the thing that most people think of when they think about cybersecurity, and that is protecting people against attack. Now, if you haven't come across The Art of War, the book, then it was written by Sun Tzu, a Chinese military general and strategist and philosopher who lived about 2,500 years ago. The fact that he is older than Christ and yet his book, The Art of War, is still relevant today and being taught at West Point gives you some idea of the impact of his thoughts. And essentially, to paraphrase, one of the things he said was, if you know your enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Now, what the heck does that mean? Well, in short form, it means that it's very important to understand your own capabilities, but if you want to defeat an attacker, you must first learn to think like an attacker and anticipate their moves. Now, there are whole industries related to understanding what our capabilities in cybersecurity, but our thought less so. So how do attackers think? What do they look like? Well, they're not all the same, are they? They come from different countries and backgrounds and ethnicities and genders and beliefs and thinking types. And if they're not all the same, and yet we need to be able to think like them to defeat and anticipate them, doesn't it stand to reason that we need diversity on our side? So we need difference in thought, and we want to avoid groupthink. And for those people that don't know what groupthink is, it's the tendency to look and feel and think the same if you come from similar experiential backgrounds. So if we want to avoid that and think outside of the box like the attackers do, we need a wide variety of folks. Hopefully by now we all agree, which would make you think that my job is done for this whole slideshow, but not really, because we need to know why and how to get there. So what is neurodiversity? Well, neurodiversity comes from differences of thought, so that would include gender, sexuality, background, and experiences. But today I'm here to talk about neurodiversity in more of a hardwired sense. And interestingly, neurodiversity also includes the majority of people, which are neurotypical, as well as people that are neurodivergent. So those people that differ from the majority in some way. And that's how I'm using divergent, by the way. It's as in we differ in that we shared a common thought ancestor, not divergence from normal. So this isn't about autism or labels of disability like dyslexia, dyspraxia, Tourette's, OCD, ADHD, dysnomia, and dyscalculia. It's about people that are highly capable, highly qualified, and underrepresented, but essential to our business success. How essential? Well, if we think groupthink is stagnation, then neurodiversity is the cradle of continual improvement and therefore profit. We need difference to succeed, and increasing neurodiversity and diversity of all types therefore isn't a social exercise. It is a business essential. Now, who am I talking about when I'm talking about neurodivergent folks? Well, here are some examples. There are a whole host of indicators that different ways of thinking creates innovation. Some of our most successful historical inventors, composers, scientists, and thinkers are now thought to have been neurodivergent. For example, Mozart, whose documented traits of constant movement and sensitivity to sound and focus on specific pursuit may very well have been indicators of autism. Tesla, who had a well-documented sensitivity to light and challenges with social interaction and a fixation on the number 13, and lots of other examples that you can research there. And there are thousands of modern day entrepreneurs, people like Richard Branson, who is dyslexic, who said it's not a disadvantage, it's merely a different way of thinking. And the reason that he thought people who were dyslexic seemed to do so well in life is because he tends to simplify things for others, which they find useful. And should you ever get a copy of this presentation, you'll see that there are lots and lots of other examples. So here's an example of the kind of work that autistic people sometimes do in our industry. This is Auticon, who are a company that employs solely autistic people, and something they did at Siemens Group. And if you look at those statistics, you can see the kind of difference we're talking about. So that's fascinating. Now, one of the things that gets in the way of getting people into our industry are blocks to our self-belief. And that starts early. This is a current A-level textbook, Languaging Tantrums. And in reality, calling the loss of the ability to regulate emotional response, which is normally due to a whole host of overwhelming negative stimulus, a tantrum, is as unacceptable as putting someone with fibromyalgia, a condition that affects mobility and physical energy levels, on a treadmill and then calling them lazy when they fell over with exhaustion. Yet, if you can imagine the impact on, say, a 16 or 17-year-old person with autism or who is autistic in a classroom, listening to their peers talk about them in this way as having tantrums, then you can sort of understand the 1,000 cuts to your self-worth that begins at a very early age. Here's another example. This is a current example, a film called Music, which, if you haven't heard about it, came out in February 21, met with massive criticism from the autism community. The casting of dancer Manny Ziegler, with whom Sia, the creator of the music film, frequently worked. Maddie is not an autistic and plays a central character despite not having autism. This article from the Daily Mail highlighted quite well how the autistic community is not being listened to, and then posted the symptoms of autism in all of its stereotypical glory, which also then caused much distress in the autistic community. When, for example, autistics, myself included, are told we can't be autistic because, insert stereotypes the neurotypical person has read about or seen here in a movie, you don't meet that criteria. And despite those stereotypes, many people in the autistic community can discuss their feelings about this very well indeed, and highlight when others are using privilege to marginalize in them, whilst in this case trying to profit, as in Sia's film. So here's an example of an autistic community member highlighting how Sia was using her privilege to capitalize and marginalize us. And this is Sia's response. Did you do any research or consult the community at all? And how condescending it was not to use a disabled actor. And Sia's response, yes, well, we won't dignify that. The other thing that I would like to highlight is Sia pointed out that she had spent some time talking to Autism Speaks. If she had spent any significant time researching the views of the autistic community, she'd know that that particular charity is viewed often with deep disgust, and certainly a lot of high levels of concern in how it represents autistic people and how they should be served. So we want to fight groupthink. We want innovation, we want resilience, and so what we need from you is allyship, which is the practice of emphasizing social justice, inclusion, human rights by members of an in-group to advance the interests of an oppressed or marginalized group. So basically what we're saying is we want to be part of the conversation. It shouldn't be about us without us. We need you to be allies and to use your privilege towards anti-oppression, anti-racism, towards inclusive conversations, and towards using social justice theories and ideals. Because it's all of our interest to do that and to grow our innovation and resilience in our industry. If you need help doing that, well, talk to the people who you want to include, but here are some starting points. So Inclusive Leadership and Driven by Difference are excellent books that give you a high-level boardroom appreciation of some of the statistics behind what I'm saying. Inclusion nudges and Asperger's on the job. Very much more practical books, particularly Inclusion Nudges, which I love because it has so many quick wins and conversation openers that you can have with your team. And I'm on the board of Neurocyber UK. I love being part of Neurocyber because it has a wide variety of neurodivergent people. I'm autistic, so I'm one of the members. And so it's definitely a conversation that is inclusive about supporting our industry. So I'd like to say thank you for taking your time to listen. I'm sorry it was a very quick whiz through. I'm on Cyber Go Giver on Twitter. I'm always happy to have a workshop or a longer conversation about inclusion, particularly for neurodivergent people, and increasing neurodiversity within our industry. So thank you very much. Cheers.